Hello everyone, my name is Wasiu. I'm here with Ryan to present our final project, Real-Time Tracker for the Command Shift Bootcamp we recently completed. What and why we built this app. This app was built to solve some of the challenges faced by travelers. When there is disruption like delay or cancellation, travelers get worried and they get disturbed. So there is a need for them to strategize and or replan their journey. With this, they can explore alternative routes or other modes of transportation. So the app helps them to optimize their time by providing them with accurate travel time, potential delay, and the average delay time for a particular service for the previous 5 days. So basically, the app allows them to search and view information that is related to a particular train service for a particular day. And with the app, users can select a time and their origin and destination train stations, while the app will return a list of suitable air services available for the journey. For services which have already been completed, the app will provide information on the punctuality of the service. The real-time tracker can also provide data on the average delay for a particular service over the past 5 days. With this app, users can make a better informed decision about which train to take while using the delay information that is provided by the app. I will give a quick demo on how a user can use the app. This is the landing page for the app. So a user can select maybe from Liverpool to Manchester and he can select any suitable time. For instance, maybe a user select 6 a.m. now and click on the search button. And the search button provides the different services available from that time and after, and it shows the platform for which the train is to be taken. So if a user wants or if the traveler wants more details, so this view details gives us information about the service provider, the timetable, the arrival time on the timetable, so the actual arriving time. So this means that it has not arrived yet. Then the average delay time for the past 8 days. So with this information, the travelers can use it to replan their journey if there is any kind of disruption or delay. Also, this app provides information if a particular service is not running at a particular time. For instance, let's say users wants to travel from Liverpool to Manchester at 12 a.m., which most likely it will not be running at that time. So by clicking on this, you can see that it gives an error message. There are no results from please try again with different search criteria. This is just a quick demo on how travelers can make use of this app. Front-end technologies used. So in building our app, the programming language used was script, and the markup language we used HTML, HTML5, and we used basic CSS styling to build the app. The framework employed in developing the app is React front-end and framework, and we use Wasiu to call data from our API. So the back-end technologies use Node.js runtime environment, which is a JavaScript runtime environment. Then we use Express.js to consolidate as a framework with the Node.js. So the API used is REST API, which is used to communicate with the server in building our app. I'm going to pass on to Ryan now, who is going to explain more about the behavior and functionalities of this app. Thank you.
Thanks, Wasiu. I'm Ryan. I'm now going to talk through some of the ways of working that we'd established, some of the problems that we encountered along the project, and also walk through some of the code. So kicking off with ways of working, we used Figma, particularly near the start of the project, for getting our ideas down and putting together a rough plan for what we wanted to achieve. Every time we met, we did a quick stand-up and just made sure that we knew what each other was doing and what we would be working on next. When we finished the implementation, we did a bit of a retrospective just to reflect on what we would have done differently if we were to do this sort of project again. We also made quite a lot of use of pair programming and walking through code together just to make sure that we were both clear on how things worked. In terms of the problems that we encountered, one of the big ones here is constraints imposed by our choice of external API. So while our app is all very centered around using historical data to try and give you an average delay over a period of time, that period of time that we can use at the moment is restricted by the volume of data and as far back as the API will allow us to go. So we're doing 5 days. I think technically it would let us go back to 7 days, but we've just chosen 5. If we had a different API or potentially, I think, a paid for version of the API that we currently use, gives you access to a much larger volume of historical data that spans back probably weeks and months rather than just a number of days. The component structure has changed a few times as the project's evolved, and this has really been out of necessity. So as things have been built on and added, we've had to switch this around a bit to make sure that everything works. We had some cause issues when we were initially setting up our integration with our API. So when we tried to communicate with our external API directly from the front end, we got these cause issues. So we had to figure out how to get around that, and I'll walk through some of that in the code in a minute. And then also just time. I think there was stuff that at the outset we thought we might be able to get the time to do, like adding user authentication, which we were looking at using Firestore and Firebase to do. As it happens, we didn't quite get the time to do that, but that's certainly something that could be added in the future, and like beyond MVP to save a user's recent searches or anything like that. And as mentioned before, you could also look into what you can do either with the existing API and perhaps a paid for plan, or a different API that would give you access to that greater volume of historic data that you could use. So jumping into the code now, the first thing I want to talk about is the backend. So as I mentioned before, we had some cause issues when we were trying to communicate with the external API directly through the front end. And the way that we've got around that is to put this Express server on the back end, and we're actually routing all of our requests from the front end to our back end server and then out to our external API. And then we've got a couple of different calls that could be made. So the first call up here returns the list of search results based on the user's search. And this other API call here is what we use to get specific details on a particular service, which is what I want to come to next. So if I jump quickly back into our app, and I'm going to search for a time, I'm going to view one of these, and we'll see that in this service details component here, we get who the service was operated by, the timetable arrival, the actual arrival, and then we get this average figure down here. And so the component where we're doing all this, which was actually where the bulk of the work was, is in here. So most of the work probably was on fetching this average delay, and the way we eventually landed on doing that was to construct an array that's going to have 5 things in it. We're going to loop through this. Every time we loop through it, we're going to go back by a day to pull back the previous day of data. If the response that we get back on a given day is either an error or we get back an error that tells us explicitly that no schedule was found, then we know the service didn't run on that day, and I'm going to insert that into the array as null. Otherwise, I'm going to stick the response into the array. And then when all of those promises have resolved and we've got all of those responses back, we're then going to filter out the null responses. And then when we eventually do the calculation to get the average delay, we're only using the valid responses as the basis for doing that. So we're not including days in the calculation where actually that train service didn't run. The other thing that I want to just pull out quickly is the way that we approach component rendering. So for this MVP, we're not using anything like React Router or anything like that. We're just using state variables to determine what is rendered to the screen. So initially, when you load up the screen, you get our landing page. Otherwise, anytime a user has attempted to make a search, they're either going to get back an array of search results, which is a length of 0, that has nothing in it, in which case you'll get the error component. Otherwise, you'll get the search results component rendered to the screen. I think those were the main bits of code that I wanted to pull out where the most time was spent in terms of getting the backend working with the API integration, with getting the component rendering, and we're getting the service details component up and running. So then all that's left to do now is just to thank everyone at CommandShift for all the guidance and support over the last 6 months, and then mine and Wasiu's socials are down here if anyone wants to look at those. Thanks very much.